For a reading this morning, we're going to talk about the Interfaith Amigos. I highly recommend their TED Talk, the Interfaith Amigos. This came courtesy of Mary. She was a fan before I was. In America after 9/11, a friendship formed between a pastor, an imam, and a rabbi. What distinguishes these three Interfaith Amigos is a unique approach to what they call the spirituality of interfaith relations. They might each be using slightly different words, but they are getting at the same universal truth. So here are three excerpts on love from their book, Finding Peace Through Spiritual Practice, the Interfaith Amigos Guide to Personal, Social, and Environmental Healing. Rabbi Ted Falcon states, Rabbi Akiba, one of Judaism's greatest sages, taught, love your neighbor as yourself. That's Leviticus 19:18. It's the greatest principle in the whole of the Torah. Loving neighbor and loving stranger are both consequences of loving God. They are also paths to loving God. Martin Buber taught, this love of others is higher than any other service that one can give to God. Without it, there is simply no love for God. Pastor Don McKenzie states, Jesus teaches us to open our hearts. Love permits and energizes the capacity to open the heart, to move out from the ego into a greater, deeper sense of our interconnectedness. Love is a force for change because it brings people together. It invites cooperation and collaboration. It inspires us to long for and make use of an open heart that is able to empathize and to have compassion for other people. And finally, Imam Jamal Rahman states, love's call is at the center of our being, but we are not aware of its deepest purpose until we open our hearts through the faithful practice of compassion for ourselves and for all of God's creation, both animate and inanimate. Compassion is love made manifest, according to many spiritual traditions, including Islam, he said. By loving ourselves and others, and by doing righteous deeds, we will be brought into the presence of supreme love itself. Self-compassion means to accept and embrace ourselves just as we are. When we continuously allow ourselves to lovingly enfold both our laughter and our tears, both the light and the shadow aspects of our being, something awakens and shifts deep inside us, and we open into an expanded capacity to love and to be loved. And with an increased capacity to love comes the realization that true love of God involves love and care for all of God's creation. So ends the reading.
When I was first thinking about what to talk about today, I thought that I would talk about the value of love in all the major religions of the world. I figured it'd be a way to introduce our summer series, which is going to be about our windows. We're going to have 9 different speakers from each of the different faith traditions come and talk about those traditions so that we can learn more about them. And by the way, we're still looking for speakers, so if you have ideas or if you yourself are practicing one of these traditions, please let us know. Yet, as I began to explore this idea of love at the center of all faiths, I was looking into a core teachings of love and trying to find different readings. I realized it was way too big a topic for this period of time that I have available. So we did the reading from the Interfaith Amigos as a kind of a sampler. Love is at the center of many faith traditions, and indeed, love is at the center of our faith tradition as well. It's also central to my own personal theology, and as a people of liberal faith, how we talk about God or the divine is also very personal and even malleable as we age. And heads up, I'm going to be using the God word today, so just be prepared. Do what's true for you, right? Because Unitarian Universalists often alternate words like life force, universe, source, great mystery, spirit of life. Please know that I use the word God in this spirit, in this broader spirit. Reverend Gretchen Haley of Foothills Unitarian Church says, our God talk is, at best, an attempt to name life in the broadest, widest possible sense, to give us a sense of knowing the unknowing at our core. But in the end, we realize that words aren't enough, and call it what you will, the important part is the feeling is what matters. The experience, the reality, the grace. Seek that, praise that, give thanks for that, and the rest is just guesswork. For now, I'd like to tell a personal story about, for me, how God is love. I grew up on a 140-acre ranch near Larkspur, and this image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on the left hung in our kitchen, so it was right there all the time. And the image of the Immaculate Heart of Mary was also very prevalent for me. Can't you just see, though, that love is central to both of these images? Right here, right where the heart is. We lived about a 15-minute drive from St. Peter's Catholic Church and Monument, and on the way home, I would sit in the back seat and read the Denver Post. One Sunday, around 1972, I came across the line in the Denver Post, God is love. Excited, I proclaimed from the back seat, isn't that awesome? God is love. And my mom turned around and said, oh no, God is our Father in heaven, sitting on his throne, watching over us. Some magical being up there in heaven, something to do with that. She obviously had a more old school way of thinking about God. And in that moment, I realized that my own personal theology might differ from my mother's. Even earlier, when I was around 4 or 5 years old, my older sister, we lived in Denison, Iowa then, sat me on the top steps. And she sat me down and she says, now, you have a father here, and that's our dad. But you also have a Father in heaven, and that's God. And I remember thinking in that moment, that's not how I think about God. I don't think of God as some king-like father figure sitting on a throne. Then, later in high school, I took a world religions class. The Golden Rule again, see that? I saw and got a taste of many different faith traditions beyond Catholicism. And my big takeaway from all those religions was basically they're saying the same thing. Some variation of the Golden Rule. Care for yourself as you would care for yourself. Care for others as you would care for yourself. It is a way of saying that love is at the center of all these religions. And one more story for you. I know that some of you have heard this. I had an out-of-body experience when I was 19. No drugs were involved. I was just sitting there enjoying a thought-provoking conversation with a couple of friends. We were discussing whether or not Adam and Eve was a really good metaphor or whether or not it was real. And I was just sitting on that living room floor, kind of pausing, and all of a sudden, I was in an all-white room with a great big picture window on the far wall. And beyond that window was a most brilliant, beautiful white light. And I knew that that was the divine, and that was what I wanted to get to. But the picture window was really thick plate glass, and it was totally impenetrable. And there was nothing in the room that I could use to throw at it to break the window. So I just kind of stepped back and relaxed and admired this beautiful, welcoming light. And then a voice very quietly said, turn around, turn around. I turned around, and the last wall of the room was missing. And very trustingly, I just walked off of that floor into the white, all supported, held for a moment, and then back on that living room floor. As that vision has unfolded in my life, I've taken it to mean that I do not need an intermediary or like a priest in order to have a direct experience of the divine. And further, that I can be supported and loved by that. Thus, my spiritual wandering began in earnest. Over the years, I've dabbled in earth-centric spiritualities, goddess studies, shamanic journeys. For 30 years, I studied the new cosmology, the scientific origin story of our universe, a la Father Thomas Berry, a Passionist priest. I've regularly attended Dharma talks. I often dabble into the Tao Te Ching, especially Stephen Mitchell translation. And in 2004, I did a vision quest, a rite of passage. So all of this interspiritual exploring that I've been doing has been right alongside the strong spiritual tradition that I grew up with. And making sense of it all in an ever-changing world is my spiritual practice. In more recent months, for various reasons, I've been kind of wrestling with this tension between my faith of origin and who I am now after 23 years being in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. I'm trying to decipher if I even consider myself a Christian or how that's actually defined. Somebody said there's many Christianities, and I kind of think that's true. How do I better define how I view the divine or a spirit or a source? While I love the Dorothy Day, Mother Teresa style of progressive Catholicism, including their social justice ethics of caring for the disadvantaged and living a Christ-like life, I was turned off by the extreme judgmentalism and biased exclusivity, saying, we're right, they're wrong. I didn't buy that. Maybe that's why now I kind of feel like a spiritual mongrel or a mixed breed. So I'm comfortable with being accepted here at UU and being able to be exactly who I am in all that holy spiritual hodgepodge. Again, with love as central to my own personal theology, I once asked a boyfriend, I said, do you believe in unconditional love? He said, no, I don't believe it's possible. Needless to say, that boyfriend did not make the grade. I do believe in unconditional love, and one of my best lessons in unconditional love is being the partner to someone who's neurodivergent. And that unconditional love extends to close family who sometimes still believe that the earth is only 6,000 years old, or friends who voted differently than I did, or dear ones who are two-spirited, gender-neutral, mixed race, pagans, atheists, agnostics, those who struggle with addiction. Extending love just feels like the right thing to do. One of the books I've been reading recently is Mary Magdalene Revealed. In it, author Megan Watterson, a Harvard-trained theologian, illuminates the gospel of Mary Magdalene, which was an early gospel that was long buried. In one of the chapters of the Mary Magdalene Revealed book, Watterson describes an author named Marguerite Porret, who was burned at the stake in France in 1310, along with her copy, The Mirror of the Simple Souls, her book. Porret was condemned as a relapsed heretic. She was considered to be a free spirit, defined as someone who believed that human beings could achieve union with the divine without mediation of the church. I was also interested to learn that the free spirits also believe that God is love, and that love, being God, can lead the soul to union. Watterson says Porret wrote that Watterson wrote about Porret that she didn't need the direction of the church or an external spiritual authority, but just rather the voice of love that was within her. Marguerite wrote, quote, I am God, says love, for love is God, and God is love, and this soul is God by the condition of love. So you can see why Marguerite Porret was deemed a heretic and burned at the stake. And did you notice those words again? God is love. I wasn't the only one resonating with these words. I've also started reading Marcus Borg, one of the greatest theologians in progressive Christianity, specifically his book titled The God We Never Knew, Beyond Dogmatic Religion to a More Authentic Contemporary Faith. Borg helps readers to move beyond the authoritative divinity of our childhood by tracing his own journey toward an equally powerful, more authentic view of God, more compatible with good science, critical thinking, and religious pluralism. Borg takes seriously our culture's growing secularization and the diminishing numbers evident in fundamental Christian settings, where people have grown suspicious of doctrinal claims that believing the right things is the only way to be saved. He also takes seriously that many in the modern world come to know that my own experience can be trusted and considered true. As part of your own interfaith exploration, I do invite you to check out the TED Talk with the Interfaith Amigos. In this TED Talk, they describe the core teachings of each of their traditions. Reb Falcon says that the core teaching of Judaism is an evolving awakening to oneness. And it's a oneness that demands ethical action in the world. Imam Raham says the core teaching of Islam is compassion for self and compassion for others. And Pastor Don McKenzie says the core teaching of Christianity is unconditional love without conditions. Together, they empower spiritual teachers and seekers of all faiths to know that true peace requires both inner and outer action, reminding us that we are all the vehicles of love and peace in this world. So, how do you understand the spirit of life, God, the universe, your higher power? What does an authentic spiritual life mean for you? Who can you show love to unconditionally? Love is at the center of our Unitarian Universalist values, and love is a key spiritual value that is fundamental to who we are as human beings. Let's go out and live and love in our world as best we can. May it be so, and blessed be.